I want to talk about this due on sale clause a little bit and how to avoid it. Do you guys, do you deal with the due on sale clause here in Nevada? Okay, so you'll verify this stuff that I'm going to give them, right? Sure. Wink, wink. You know what I mean? As our day attorney. Now are you billing us at $200 an hour right now or anything? $385. Are you $385? Do we get shirts with that or something? Holy cow. Okay. So check this out. Due on sale clause. What a due on sale clause is this. A provision in a mortgage that allows the lender to demand repayment in full if the borrower sells the property that serves as security for the mortgage. It's basically something in the mortgage that gives the lender the right to say, hey, this loan is due immediately, today, in full amount, because you've just transferred ownership, okay? Well, first and foremost, you're going to use think about a due on sale clause when you're taking property subject to, or if there is a wraparound mortgage situation, something like that. So that's when this would come up. First and foremost, one of the ways that I think you should practice is full disclosure. Let the, one of the ways to operate is to let the lender know what you're doing. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about that this afternoon in detail. But number one, there's no due on sale jail. Like, even though you would do that, and people make a big deal about due on sale clauses, you're not going to go to jail or anything like that for the most part, unless there was some other illegal component there, right? But number two, there's this little loophole, right, Mr. Attorney? There's a loophole, and I'm about to give you what the loophole is. And the loophole is this Garn-St. Germain Act of 1982. And this is a law. This is law. And basically, in short, what this Garn-St. Germain Act of 1982 says is that a consumer has the right to put their property in a trust this morning for tax purposes, for estate planning, all of the above. So what's interesting about that, what did we learn today about a trust? A trust is used for a lot of things, but one of the things it's used for is, what is it? Anonymity. Anonymity. So no one really knows who owns the trust, because no one really, I guess, technically owns the trust. You have a trustee that controls the trust, and you have a beneficiary who receives the benefit of the trust, but no one really owns the trust there. The trust owns that property. And when there's anonymity involved, when a bank says, well, who owns that? Oh, it's a trust that owns that. They know that they're not going to be able to get to the owner. Plus, by law, they can't institute the due on sale clause because of the Garn-St. Germain Act of 1982. So a trust is a very important thing. I would recommend, if you're doing subject to, wraparound mortgages, that type of thing, to consider the trust as the holding entity for that property. I think it's smart, and I think it adds another layer of protection for you. Do you want to add anything to that you can think of? Did I cover it pretty good?
You did great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Can I split that $385 with you? Buy some new shoes or something, I don't know. But I would recommend that when you're using these strategies, and by the way, please sit and meet with your attorneys before doing anything. Make sure they're coming up with that contract. Make sure they're helping you devise this. But I would recommend to consider a trust when you've got a situation where you're using creative financing of a subject to, wraparound mortgages, things like that. Very important that you do that. You may also want to create a junior lien. It's another way to add some insulation with that. We'll talk a little bit more about that this afternoon on how that might be beneficial. So I don't want to steal my content from this afternoon. I just want to touch on trust a little bit more, just so that you get a full understanding. You're going to have, in a sense, you're telling me what to do with it, right? But you're going to be the beneficiaries. So if it's a property and that property creates cash flow, the trustee sets it up to where every month that check is cut to you on a cash flow basis. You don't own the trust. I'm sorry, you don't own that property. The trust holds that property, and that's who the owner is. The anonymity of a trust is important. Also, in setting up a trust, this is why you want to use an attorney. Questions like, how long do you set it up for? Is there anything else that you want to possibly put in that trust? Or is this just going to be an entity that is holding one asset, which is probably what you're looking at when you're doing a subject to or a wraparound mortgage. Benefits, again, asset protection, anonymity, and the avoiding of the due on sale clause. A lot of people will set up subject tos and they won't put them in a trust, and when that bank gets the tax bill, if they get the tax bill, because remember your taxes a lot of times on residential properties are escrowed, when they get that tax bill and they notice the new owner, they'll say, oh, wait a minute, this isn't who we made the loan to. We need to enact our due on sale clause. When the owner or the bank gets the tax bill and it's a trust, they automatically know that they can't enact that due on sale clause. And that's typically how a bank finds out that that ownership has changed by the tax bill, because they don't run title every year, things like that. Yes, Peter?
Does the trust own the real estate directly, or do you have...
The trust owns the...
LLC first?
The trust owns the real estate. Could you put other entities in the trust? Sure. But in that particular instance, the trust owns the LLC, or owns the property, correct? Yes.
No need for an LLC.
In this particular, no, you can, the trust can own the property. You don't need to have that in an LLC in that trust. You certainly could, but you don't need to. And by the way, I am not an attorney. That's my disclaimer, right? My buddy is in the back. They pay him the big bucks, but he splits that a little bit with me because of, actually, that would be against the law. He couldn't do that, right? You could not do that. So I didn't say that. Erase that from the tape, if you would, for me. Erase that from the tape. Yes?
My question might be quite silly. Why does...
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Is that any way to set up your question to me? John, my question might be quite silly. But go ahead, VJ.
The question is, why does one want to avoid due on sale? If you've sold the property, you've got a new transaction going, why do you want to take shelter under these entities like a trust?
Why do you want to take shelter under the entity of a trust?
No.
Does these ring a bell?
Why does one want to avoid due on sale?
Why does one want to due on sale? I'm missing your question.
Why do you want to avoid due on sale?
Why due on sale? Oh, why do you want to avoid due on sale?
That's right.
No problem here. It's just, I'm picking up the accent a little bit. So why does someone want to avoid the due on sale?
That's right.
Okay, good question. Do we have any questions here? No. I'm just kidding. My teacher used to do that. You want to avoid the due on sale clause because if you just buy that in your own name or do that subject to a wraparound mortgage in an LLC's name, the bank could call that mortgage due. If you don't pay that mortgage right then and there, all in full, they start foreclosure and they'll take your property away. And you might have taken, $10,000, $15,000 out of your pocket to get that mortgage caught up. They enact the due on sale clause, and then they put the property through foreclosure, and you'll lose it, and you'll lose that money. That's why you want to avoid that. You see that, right? Okay, good question, though. Yes. Hi, Ivy, right? Yes. Ivy, I-V-Y. right? Right on, okay, dig it. Like poison?
Preceded by.
Preceded by poison? You know, I don't think of ivy like that. Me being a Chicagoan, and Wrigley Field, the beautiful ivy, that's what I think of ivy. So I don't think of the poison ivy, with the exception of my wife who has a very highly allergic reaction to that. But go ahead, Ivy, what's your question?
Okay, if you decide that you want to sell the property,
Yeah.
can you take it out of trust, and how would you do that?
Well, if you decide that you want to sell a property that's in a trust, this is where the trustee comes in, and the trustee is the one that actually orchestrates the sale of the trust. And you're going to have a closing just like you have a closing with any property that's in any entity. But remember, the trustee is at the control board. Okay? Now you're going to, when you set up that trust, you're assigning a certain trustee there, and that trustee is at the control board. So hopefully it's someone that you know. Typically it's an attorney. And that attorney pulls all strings. But it's no different than if that property was in an LLC or something like that. Or very little different, I should say. Yes?
Can the trustee and the beneficiary be the same person?
The trustee and the beneficiary could be the same person. Is it advisable always? No, that'd be something I want you to talk with your attorney on, because there could be somebody that says because that trustee and beneficiary is the same person, you know, you're not insulating yourself as much with liability there. So that would be something you want to talk with that attorney on. Yep.
That chronology of creating the trust in relationship to the deal.
Yeah. A trust is probably going to take a little bit longer to create than an LLC. And it's probably going to be a little bit more expensive in most states. So what I would do is create a trust ahead of time, knowing that you're going to invest here in Vegas or in Florida or wherever, and have that thing ready to go prior to. That's a good point. Yeah? Good questions. Good thought out questions. It wouldn't be an event without Charles having a question.
So John, I've been talking to some brokers on some assumable loans.
Yes.
Some multis.
Yes.
And I've broached the subject of something similar, and then they didn't seem to.
You broached the subject.
Yes.
Haven't heard that before, but okay.
Right.
You brought the subject up.
I felt it out.
Excuse me? Okay, go ahead.
And they didn't seem to warm up to the idea. So how do you sort of, how do you?
They didn't seem to warm up to the idea of what?
Of trying to do a wraparound mortgage.
Okay, and you visited
loan.
one person? No, now
No.
you're talking two different things here. An assumable loan is where you actually take over the loan in your name.
Yeah, but I don't want to do that. Right?
Well, that's right. So that's not an assumable loan. Or this is an assumable loan situation. The due on sale clause, where you might have one in the loan that you're assuming, you're actually assuming that with the permission of the bank.
Yeah,
So that's
can I not use this approach to get around not assuming the loan?
You're taking the loan subject to the terms that are already in place. So you take ownership to the property, but the loan is still tied to the previous owner.
So, but if they're selling it and listing it as an assumable loan, can I go to them and say, can I do a subject to instead?
Well, sure, you could do that. Yeah, why not?
So how do I, that's where I sort of ran into a roadblock. How do I,
How many times have you done that?
not that often, 2, 3.
Okay, so
You're saying keep doing it?
yes, keep approaching it. In those 2 or 3, maybe that didn't work out, but if you did, remember, 125, 1, right? 125, 1. When you visit 3, you got a long way to go till you get to 100, right?
That's what you're thinking.
Why not? Absolutely. Why not? Anything else? These are all real good questions.